The movie opens with a scene that is set in Cambodia, in the year 2015. An aid helicopter lands on some grassy fields, with locals watching the descent. The aircraft is there to pick up Dr. Han and his assistant, both of whom are from South Korea. Dr. Han embraces one of the locals, bids them farewell, and rushes to the helicopter. Just then, one of the old men from the village comes to Dr. Han, whose real name is Soo Hyun, and shows him a baby with a cleft lip. Soo Hyun's assistant pleads for him to get into the helicopter, as he is booked up back home, and the next flight will be 2 weeks away. However, Soo Hyun is determined to help the baby, so he ignores his assistant, takes his equipment, and heads off to help the baby while the helicopter takes off and leaves him behind. Soo Hyun eventually does the surgery required for the baby's cleft lip all by himself, and heads for a cigarette when finished. As he's sitting, enjoying his smoking break, the old man who had him help the baby comes and sits beside him. Soo Hyun compliments the old man, stating that he is wise, but the old man replies that he merely trusts the unseen more than the seen. We learn that the baby with the cleft lip's name is Lunan, and she isn't the old man's granddaughter, as Soo Hyun believed. The old man revealed that he found Lunan abandoned in a forest, as cleft lip babies are believed to be a curse in this region. He thanks Soo Hyun for granting Lunan a new life, though the doctor is humble and replies that he was simply doing his job. Soo Hyun is then asked about what he most wants in life, to which he answers that he wants to see someone. This prompts the old man to hand him a bottle that he was wearing around his neck, and somehow the old man also knows that Soo Hyun doesn't have long to live. The year is 1985, and a young man is falling asleep watching a live performance of several dolphins jumping out of a pool. Their instructor is a young woman, who is furious that the young man has fallen asleep in the middle of her performance. The young woman's name is Yeon Ah, and the young man is Soo Hyun in his younger days. Soo Hyun attempts to explain himself, admitting that he worked late last night, but he promises he won't fall asleep at the next one. The two young adults are a couple, and very much in love. Soo Hyun and Yeon Ah are made to sit at opposite ends of the bus, and they cannot help but try to talk to each other. After they get off, Soo Hyun states that he misses her, even though they were just apart for merely minutes, and the two of them kiss. Sometime in the near future, Soo Hyun is headed back to Busan from Seoul Station. To his surprise, Yeon Ah arrives there to see him off, even though she has a show scheduled today. Before Soo Hyun can get on the train, Yeon Ah states that she wants to have his baby, which takes Soo Hyun by surprise. He is confused and at a loss for words, but not so surprised that it seems as though he is flabbergasted by his girlfriend's admission. Instead, Soo Hyun replies that they will discuss the matter in greater detail the next time they're together, and he bids his farewell to her before getting onto the train. Yeon Ah is back at work, where one of her colleagues is asking her for details on her meeting with her boyfriend, and if he has asked to marry her yet. She doesn't give a straight, simply smiling, which is enough for her colleague. Just then, Yeon Ah hears whimpering coming from a box. She kneels down to open it, and much to her delight, there is a puppy inside. Meanwhile, Soo Hyun is outside Busan Station smoking a cigarette. He decides to use the payphone, and for 1 second briefly zones out. Just then, he is distracted when he hears the loud coughing from a man in the next payphone booth. He goes to investigate and finds an elderly gentleman sitting on the ground, asking him where he is. Soo Hyun informs the older gentleman that he is at Busan Station, and the older man looks at Soo Hyun in horror. The older gentleman is, in fact, the older version of Soo Hyun we see at the start of the movie. Older Soo Hyun asks younger Soo Hyun his name, and is shocked when he answers, stating that is also his name. At this point, younger Soo Hyun is slowly backing away, suspecting that the man may be experiencing some sort of delusions, or have taken something that is making him spout nonsense. Just then, blood pours out of older Soo Hyun's nose, and he starts coughing intensely. Younger Soo Hyun attempts to help him, but he pushes him away and runs away. However, younger Soo Hyun realizes that the man he was just helping has run away with his handkerchief, so he goes off to try to retrieve it. Younger Soo Hyun follows drops of blood all the way to the bathroom. He knocks on the door of one of the cubicles and asks the person inside if he could have his handkerchief back. Just then, older Soo Hyun zones out, and much to his surprise, he is now in the bathroom of a plane, where he is on the floor as the flight attendants repeatedly knock on the door, asking him if he's okay. It is clear that older Soo Hyun is now back in the present day, as he exits the bathroom and makes his way back to his seat. He then takes out the bottle the old man from Cambodia gave him, stares at the pills inside it, and then puts it back into his pocket as he stares out of the window. Not too long after, older Soo Hyun is back at work. He is looking at some x-rays in his office when his colleague, Hai Won, comes into the room and tells him off for being away for too long. She is mildly annoyed that Soo Hyun had her and the rest of his colleagues cover for his scheduled surgeries and lectures, but Soo Hyun replies that he's forever grateful to them. Hai Won asks him to take her to lunch to make up for all the trouble he's caused, and Soo-hyun agrees. After that, Soo-hyun shows her some x-rays of someone with terminal cancer and asks her what she would say to someone in this particular state. She replies that she would likely advise that person to get their affairs in order, as they wouldn't have long, not knowing that they are likely Soo Hyun's x-rays. Later that day, older Soo-hyun is sitting with his old friend, Tae-ho, at the beach. Soo-hyun reveals to him that he had a hallucinogenic episode where he met his younger self. After consuming one of the pills, a mysterious old man in Cambodia gifted him. Tae-ho can't understand why his friend would consume pills given to him by some random stranger, but nonetheless wants to hear details about his hallucinogenic episode. Soo Hyun laughs and merely states that his younger self was as handsome as he remembers himself to be. Tae-ho remarks that the beach used to have a lot more attractive women visiting it back then, stating the names of all the girls he had a relationship with until he's stopped by Soo-hyun and they both laugh. Suddenly, Soo-hyun's expression turns serious, and he asks Tae-ho if he thinks if it were possible to go back, would he see Yeon-ah? Tae-ho is shocked by his friend's question, asking him to forget her, but he's suddenly distracted by a beach ball coming his way, which he is insistent on hitting away. The scene suddenly cuts away to the younger Tae-ho hitting the beach ball back to where it came from. The younger Soo Hyun is also sitting there, meaning this is the past. The girls receive the beach ball but are annoyed, as one of them is struck by the ball in the head. Tae-ho sits back down next to Soo-hyun and shows him a fruit which is apparently an orange and tangerine hybrid, and plans to make money by selling it in bulk. He then asks his friend how his relationship with his girlfriend is going, and he replies that she wants to have a baby with him. Tae-ho is surprised and jealous, as he remarks that Soo-hyun is a lucky man to have a girlfriend as pretty as Yeon-ah. However, Soo-hyun states that he isn't happy with this, as he doesn't plan to ever have children. The two friends then get up and walk along the beach, and it doesn't take long for Tae-ho to get distracted by a group of girls who he thinks are looking at him. At this time, Tae-ho is a policeman, though he is still as sleazy as his older self is. Soo Hyun reveals to him that he met a man last night with the same name as his, and he ran off with his handkerchief. Though Tae-ho isn't interested, he then bids Tae-ho farewell and states that he believes his orangerine business does well. Meanwhile, older Soo Hyun arrives back home, and he stares at the photographs of his daughter. This prompts him to immediately call her, and she answers happily, which indicates that they have a good relationship even though they don't live together. As father and daughter are conversing, Soo Hyun hears a male voice and asks his daughter who that is, a question she doesn't answer. Instead, she asks her father to hang up if he's insistent on nagging her. Suddenly, Soo-hyun has to hang up as he starts having a coughing fit and rushes to his pills. Later that night, older Soo Hyun is doing laundry, and he stumbles across the magic time-traveling pills again. He notices he still has his younger self's handkerchief, looks at himself in the mirror, says that he's going to perish anyway, and takes the pills again. Back in the past, younger Soo Hyun bumps into Yeon-ah outside his apartment, who just happened to be looking for him. He asks what's the matter, and she hands him the box with a puppy inside it, stating that it's their family now. Soo-hyun is confused, but Yeon-ah states that she wants him to raise the puppy, as she runs off into the taxi waiting to take her to the train station. Soo-hyun takes the puppy home and is sat in his apartment confused about what to do with it, so he decides to go to sleep instead. As he falls asleep, he is awoken by the sound of footsteps and is shocked to see a man inside his home, across the hall. The man comes closer, and Soo-hyun realizes it is the same man he tried to help outside Busan Station, the older man who claimed to share the same name as him. Older Soo Hyun approaches him, and the younger asks him how he made it inside his home. He is shocked that this man continues to claim to be the older version of him, and he informs the younger man that he made it in his home because he is him. Younger Soo Hyun is reluctant to believe him, though his older self shows him his ID and even knows the name of the puppy he just named Potato. Younger Soo Hyun, still not willing to believe the strange man, asks him what he wants from him. Older Soo Hyun answers that he just wants to see Yeon-ah once more, which infuriates the younger man. Just then, older Soo Hyun's nose begins to bleed, and he once again runs away, though Soo Hyun shouts that if he comes near Yeon-ah, he will hurt him. older Soo Hyeon ends up back in his bathroom, whilst younger Soo Hyeon is spooked. Younger Soo Hyeon races to Taeho's apartment and barges in, whilst Taeho is entertaining a woman. Taeho isn't interested in hearing what he has to say, asking him to leave, but stops when Soo Hyun informs him that the psycho man knows that he is a cop. The next day, older Soo Hyun has the magic pills analyzed, and to his disappointment, he finds no special ingredients. The pills appear to be herbal, made from a mixture of plants. Younger Soo Hyun is conducting some analysis of his own. He has asked Taeho to use forensics to analyze the fingerprints on the lighter older Soo Hyun accidentally left at his home. To his shock, the results came back, and they indicated no fingerprints were found besides his own. Just then, he has an idea: to get a tattoo and prove to himself that he can't possibly be the older man, as he wouldn't have the tattoo besides claiming to be him from the future. Back in the present, older Soo Hyun has to run out from a patient, as he cannot stop himself from coughing. Whilst he's in the bathroom, he notices some letters on his arm and immediately realizes his younger self has obtained a tattoo to falsify his claims. Later that day, Soo Hyun meets with his daughter, Soo-ah. The two of them plan to go on a trip together in the summer, but cannot decide where, as Soo Hyun laughs at his daughter's idea to visit an aquarium abroad. Meanwhile, younger Soo Hyun surprises Yeon-ah while she's at work with balloons. However, before he can get to her, he ends up falling into a pool of water. Yeon-ah runs towards her boyfriend when he gets up and professes his love for her. That night, the young couple spend an intimate night together. In the present, older Soo Hyun is having dinner with his daughter when she reads some papers on his desk. During dinner, he asks his daughter if she would like to study in the US, which she denies. Soo Hyun attempts to speak to his daughter about his condition, but she tries to change the subject, indicating that she is already aware, but doesn't want to discuss it. That night, Soo-ah runs out of the house, and Soo Hyun chases after her, finding her at a shipping yard and embracing her. Younger Soo Hyun attends one of Yeon-ah's shows, and is not surprised, but disappointed to see his older counterpart sitting in the audience. He goes and sits next to him, and attempts to give him his lighter back. However, older Soo Hyun replies that he can keep it, but says in exchange, he will keep the handkerchief as it's his anyway. He also shows him that tattoo, which makes his younger self realize that whatever action he takes will affect his future self. His younger self asks him several questions about the future, one of which is if he becomes a doctor, which his counterpart states he already is. Yeon-ah comes out to applause, and older Soo Hyun is immediately in a trance. He gets up from his seat and makes his way down some stairs so he can get a better look at her. Soo Hyun then trudges away, as if he saw a ghost, and his younger self chases after him, asking him again why he's here. He replies for no other reason but to see Yeon-ah, which confuses his younger self, as he asks why she isn't there in his time. Older Soo Hyun simply replies that he will find out, though this isn't enough for his younger self, as he stops him from leaving. He then reveals that Yeon-ah will perish soon, which shocks his younger self to the core. He demands to know the reason from his older counterpart, but before he can answer, he again starts coughing intensely and runs away. Older Soo Hyun goes back to his time and is relieved that his daughter is in her room safely, whilst younger Soo Hyun takes Yeon-ah to his apartment as she wants to see Potato. He then has a telegram delivered to Taeho's apartment to ask him to meet him at his place immediately, as Taeho is being intimate with his girlfriend Sun Young. Much to Sun Young's displeasure, Taeho leaves her and goes off to meet with his friend. Meanwhile, older Soo Hyun is in his home office when he sees a strange message appear on the record he is playing. It instructs him to open one of his mother's old photo albums, out of which pops a card addressed to Soo Hyun from his older self, and instructs him to return to the past again, or he will ruin his life. In the past, Soo Hyun is buying a pack of cigarettes and realizes he forgot his wallet when it's time to pay. His older self comes from behind him and hands the cashier a banknote, then takes it back after he realizes his money from the future won't work here. Later, the two have a conversation on how each wants to proceed. Younger Soo Hyun is adamant that they must stop Yeon-ah's passing, though his older self explains he cannot do so. He explains that his daughter, Soo-ah, was born from his relationship with another woman after Yeon-ah's passing, and if they were to stop that from happening, it is likely that his daughter would never be born. However, his younger self refuses to accept this, threatening him once again to ruin his life if he doesn't accept his proposal. Before he leaves, older Soo Hyun asks his younger self if he will still save Yeon-ah if it means that he has to end his relationship with her, and he confirms that he will. Older Soo Hyun proposes a condition, that he will only help him save Yeon-ah if his younger self breaks up with her. Younger Soo Hyun falls to the ground, feeling defeated, then punches a truck out of frustration. One day, younger Soo Hyun is at work when he receives a call from Yeon-ah, who is packing for their vacation together. Suddenly, Soo Hyun is called to urgently see a patient, who also happens to be his father. Once there, he is relieved to see that his father is fine. However, we learn that their relationship is strained, as his father had abused him and his mother in the past. Soo Hyun is making a call, just when older Soo Hyun walks up to him and stops him, stating that today is the day Yeon-ah passes away. He also informs him that their father also perished today, and reveals to him the cause of Yeon-ah's passing. On today's day, Soo Hyun informed Yeon-ah that he had to cancel their trip, as he was too busy with work. After that, Yeon-ah received a phone call from the aquarium, informing her that one of the dolphins was acting strange. Yeon-ah rushed over and dived into the water to help the dolphin that was itself. But tragically, she drowned in the water. Older Soo Hyun shows him a news article that was from today's date, stating that they must change the headline. Younger Soo Hyun calls Yeon-ah, informing her that he must cancel their planned vacation. Yeon-ah is disappointed, but this time, Soo Hyun asks her to come meet him at the hospital, which she gladly agrees to. Yeon-ah arrives at the hospital and embraces her boyfriend, stating that she wasn't aware that the patient he was looking after was his father. Soo Hyun reveals that his relationship with his father is strained because he witnessed his father beat his mother until she could no longer take it and ended her. He uses this as an excuse to admit to her that he cannot start a family with her and informs her that he is ending their relationship, leaving Yeon-ah in a state of shock. The next day, Soo Hyun is drinking at the shrine built for his now-deceased father, when older Soo Hyun walks in and hands him the newspaper. He congratulates his younger self for saving Yeon-ah, but his younger self is furious, grabbing him by the shirt and asking him to leave and never return. Afterward, Tae-ho comes by but gets the same treatment. His friend asks him to get out of his sight. Back in the present, older Soo Hyun locks away the pills and tosses out the key. Older Soo Hyun then visits Tae-ho in his time, but to his shock, he doesn't recognize him. When he introduces himself, Tae-ho is furious with him as according to him, they haven't spoken in 30 years, and he dares to randomly show up after what he said to him. Meanwhile, in the past, Soo Hyun sees that Yeon-ah has left a scrapbook of their times together at their home. He looks through it and immediately decides to go see her. In the present, older Soo Hyun is confused when he arrives home and receives a phone call from Tae-ho, asking where he is as he's waiting for him. This confuses Soo Hyun, who just came from meeting his friend, who said they hadn't spoken in 30 years. He then informs him that he'll be over with Soo-ah, but Tae-ho has no idea who that is. Realizing that his younger self likely did something to erase Soo-ah from existence, Soo Hyun rushes to the desk to fetch the pills, though he throws out the key and tries to open it with any tool he can find. Younger Soo Hyun runs to find Yeon-ah, who is waiting for him in the rain. After almost getting run over, he sees her in the distance. He holds up the scrapbook and Yeon-ah smiles. However, suddenly she is struck by an oncoming vehicle. Yeon-ah is in critical condition, while Soo Hyun is outside sobbing as he believes it is his fault. Just then, older Soo Hyun comes to see his younger self, informing him that he has read her medical records and that if they don't operate on her to remove a blood clot in a few hours, she will perish. Younger Soo Hyun is unsure, but eventually agrees to do the surgery without official clearance. Older Soo Hyun assures him that he will carry out the surgery, while he and another female doctor will assist. Senior officials attempt to stop the surgery, but older Soo Hyun swiftly finishes the procedure before he starts coughing. Older Soo Hyun awakes in a hospital bed, with Soo-ah by his side, who informs him that he has been unconscious for 3 days straight. He had injected himself with anesthetic to force himself asleep to travel back in time. He is very soon out of bed and is able to confirm that Yeon-ah survived the surgery he had performed by looking into old medical records. He then goes to visit present-day Yeon-ah's place of work, which is a beach located out of town. However, he doesn't stop her when he sees her walk past him. Instead, older Soo Hyun is doing this to confirm to his younger self that the woman they love makes it to the future alive. One of the conditions Soo Hyun had to save Yeon-ah was that his younger self attend a conference where he would meet Soo-ah's mother, which he does. The young woman's name is Elena Hong, and she became interested in Soo Hyun after she read his thesis. Not too far in the future, Elena calls Soo Hyun late at night to inform him that he is the father of her newborn daughter, and all he can do is laugh. As the years pass by, Soo-ah gets older, and before he knows it, younger Soo Hyun is as old as his counterpart that traveled back in time. Soo Hyun and Soo-ah finally take a trip together, and he states that he is glad that she is his daughter. Soo-ah responds that she is glad that he is her father, and then asks him what she should do if she wants to see someone that she cannot meet. This question hits home for Soo-hyun, as he's been battling with it for 30 years. He advises his daughter to think of all the good times with that person, as the memories are all you have. In the not-so-distant future, Soo-hyun succumbs to his terminal illness and passes in the year 2015. At his funeral, Tae-ho, who hadn't seen his friend in 30 years, arrives and brings a box full of orangerines, thanking him, as he was able to make it big by selling them. Soo-ah approaches Tae-ho and thanks him for coming, as she states that her father informed her that the last person to leave his funeral would be his old friend. Tae-ho is shocked that he wasn't even aware that Soo-hyun had a daughter, who then hands him a notebook addressed to him from her late father. Tae-ho goes to the beach and reads the notebook, shocked that Soo-hyun apologized and explained why he asked him to never see him again 30 years ago. At the end of the book, Soo-hyun refers to him as his dear friend. Sometime in the near future, Tae-ho goes to see Yeon-ah. He informs her that Soo-hyun passed away as he was suffering from late-stage lung cancer, which makes her shed tears for her former lover. Yeon-ah admits that she believed she was over him, but turns out that wasn't the case. Tae-ho hands her the notebook his friend left behind and instructs her to read it. While at his farm, Tae-ho realizes that Soo-hyun stated in his notebook that he went back in time 9 times, meaning that he had one time-traveling pill left. He races off to his friend's home and rummages through his study in search of the pill, which he finds in the record of Soo-hyun's favorite song. He eats the pill and forces himself into unconsciousness by rolling down a flight of stairs. Suddenly, Tae-ho is in the past and in the police car of his younger self, who is startled to realize a strange man just so happens to be in the back seat of his car. Tae-ho instructs his younger self to take him to Busan Hospital, and the younger Tae-ho is too scared to say no. Once at the hospital, he runs to Soo-hyun and snatches his cigarette away from him. Soo-hyun is confused, asking the strange man who he is. The strange man reveals his identity, and Soo-hyun embraces him, apologizing for all he said. Tae-ho asks to meet him in 30 years. Soo-hyun is initially reluctant to wait that long, but Tae-ho assures his friend that the years will fly by as he runs off because he's running out of time. Tae-ho wakes up in the present and rushes to Soo-hyun's home. He receives no answer and berates himself because he forgot to tell his friend that he eventually succumbs to lung cancer from his excessive smoking habit. Meanwhile, also in the present, Yeon-ah is on a bus to Seoul Grand Park, and she cannot keep her eyes away from a man who looks awfully familiar to her at the front of the bus. When the bus stops, everyone gets off, and for a brief moment, Yeon-ah loses track of the man. She then walks down towards the lake and sees the man holding balloons, just like when Soo-hyun surprised her at work one time. The man comes over, and it is revealed to be Soo-hyun, who is alive and well. He asks Yeon-ah how long they were apart, and she simply smiles with tears in her eyes. The two embrace as the sun sets in the distance.